Hey guys, it's Kesara, and today I'm going to be doing my spoiler-free review for The Dragon's Path by Daniel Abraham. So, The Dragon's Path is the first book in the Dagger and Coin series by Daniel Abraham. I was pretty excited to pick this book up because Daniel Abraham is an author that I want to read more of because I've read the Expanse series, which he is part of the co-author team that uses the pen name James S.A. Corey, who wrote the Expanse series, and I really love the Expanse series, especially the writing style and the world building in the Expanse series. So I was excited to get to some of his fantasy because I love fantasy even more than sci-fi, so I felt like I would really love this one. I did enjoy this book and I do recommend it. I do plan on continuing on with this series, but there's a lot of things about this book that I didn't like as much as I wanted to. So in this book, we're set in a high fantasy world and we're following three characters, Marcus, Cithrin, and Getter. Marcus is a mercenary, Cithrin is an orphan that was a ward of the banking house, and Getter is the son of a noble family who is kind of pathetic, or at least he is in the beginning of this novel, and their stories kind of take off from those situations. Pretty close to the beginning, Marcus and Cithrin kind of get put into similar situations, and then Getter is put into a situation which is like very not good for him. Oh, and there's one other character that we get point of view from. His name is Dawson, and he's kind of like an unlikable character. In these reviews, I typically talk about four things: character, plot, world building, and writing style. So we're gonna start with character. And I have to say, I was a little disappointed by the characterization in this book because I felt like they did a good setup of what the characters should be, but I feel like there wasn't a whole lot of development there. The only character that I felt like got a good amount of development was Cithrin, because Cithrin starts out like kind of really pathetic, and she like finds her way into a sort of powerful place, and she does it in a very interesting way, which I really liked. But most of the other characters, like Marcus, I felt like he had zero character development. Getter, I feel like he also didn't have very much character development. He had a really interesting character arc, don't get me wrong. I liked his character arc, but I felt like he didn't have very good character development. Dawson, on the other hand, I felt like was a really interesting character. I actually really liked Dawson as a character. He's very much an unlikable character, but in an interesting way, and I enjoyed that aspect of it. But like I said, I feel like he didn't have a whole lot of development. He started out as an unlikable character, he kind of ended as an unlikable character. So I don't know how much I like Dawson in like subsequent books, but I felt like he was one of the best characters in this first book. Now we're going to talk about plot. Obviously this is a spoiler-free review, so I'm not going to go super into the plot, but one thing I really liked about this book was how political it got, because it had kind of like two sides to the politics. There was the side of the banking system and things like that, and then there was the side of the military, which I guess kind of lends to the name of the series, Dagger and the Coin, because the military is the dagger and the banking system is the coin, and I really liked that connection there. I think that worked really well, and I liked how political both sides got, because both the banking system and the military side had very different types of politics, but at the same time it got very political and got very ensourced in those details, which I really enjoyed. I love that aspect of books when it gets to that, so I enjoyed that aspect of it. That being said, I do think that I wasn't as invested in the story and in those politics as I typically am in these types of books, so that's why I didn't enjoy it as much as I normally would, but I liked that it did that and that it explored those ideas and all of those machinations that happen behind the scenes. Now we're going to talk about world building, and I think world building is what made me really enjoy this book, because I love the way that Daniel Abraham does his world building, because in this book there are like 13 different types of humans, like 13 different races. And so like there's the First Bloods, who are kind of like the regular humans, and then there are different races that have different aspects that are different than the First Bloods. Like there are some that have like horns and things like that. It's not super detailed, like I feel like we'll get more as the story progresses, but like each different race of human has like its strengths and weaknesses, and I like that aspect of it. And I like that they're like physically different than each other, and that like if they are mixed in certain ways, you might get like a mule, which is a human that is sterile, that can't reproduce. So I really loved that world building aspect of it. And obviously there's like a lot of other world building aspects of it, like the culture and things like that are completely different. So I felt like this was a really, really well built world and I really enjoyed it. I do want like a little bit more detail from it. Like I want to go a little bit deeper into that world. I want to understand like the history and things like that. But I felt like this, like the world made me kept coming back to this book. I loved that aspect of it. And it's what makes me really want to continue on with the series because I feel like it's gonna have a very, very interesting world. And then we have to talk about writing style. And I have to say, I was a little disappointed with the writing style because it was very, very similar to the Expanse series. I felt like it had the exact same voice as the Expanse series, which I understand authors have very similar voices in all of their books. But at the same time, the Expanse series is very much a hard sci-fi series, and this is very much a high fantasy series, and I don't expect my sci-fi and my fantasy to sound alike. So it was kind of disorienting for me, especially when I was listening to the audiobook, because I went between the physical book and the audiobook. And when I'm reading the physical book, it didn't bother me as much, but when I was listening to the audiobook, I kept hearing Holden's voice in my head, and Holden is the main character in the Expanse series, and it completely disoriented me from the story. I kind of wish that I had read this one first, but at the same time, the audiobook is not one that I would necessarily recommend for this series. It was a different narrator than the Expanse series audiobook, but it had the same sort of style. Like, I just felt like the audiobook narrator didn't work as well for this series as it could have. I felt like there could have been a different audiobook narrator that would have worked better for a fantasy series. I don't know. It just felt like that way for me. I had just finished a different audiobook that had like a softer audiobook narrator, and this one was a little bit harsher, so it kind of annoyed me, and I think that's why it took me as long to read this book as it did, because this is a very fast-paced book. I like the pacing in this book. It's really well done, and it kept me on my toes. But at the same time, there were aspects of the writing that kind of took me out of the story at times that just didn't work for me. So overall, I did really enjoy this book. I 100% plan on continuing on, and I'm excited to see what more this series has to offer. I do think like the ending was satisfying, but at the same time, I feel like this book felt like an introduction to the world and an introduction to the characters, but not a whole story in it and of itself. So that's why I ended up giving this one 3.75 stars. So if you read this book, let me know down in the comments. I would love to discuss with you guys. That's all I have for you guys today. I post videos every Sunday, Wednesday, and Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern time, so consider subscribing. I also post bonus videos, so if you want to be notified as soon as I upload, you can click that little bell icon. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up to support my channel. All social media links are in the description down below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.